Hey, folks, this is Rebel Rousing Rich Bergeron.
And psychic contact with his crystal ball shattered from a right hand from the new bantamweight champion.
Oh, we have so much to talk about that card. Being in attendance for the first time at a fight in 16 years. The Irish eyes were smiling on a certain O'Malley character in a lot of ways. It was just a tremendous show. Tony's going to join us in a few minutes. He's got some pressing matters to attend to. And we're also going to have Harvey Dock on the show. He's a world-class referee. He's been involved in a lot of fights. And we happened to butt heads before we coordinated on this because we were going for a John Scully original. It's got Emil Griffith's signature. No, that's the one I got now. But that's Tony's birthday present. We can't really reveal that until he gets it.
And Mr. Dock has been the third man in the ring with both Dmitry Bivol and Arturo Vidorbev. So, wow.
Yeah, a lot of big dudes. And just came off one of the biggest fights of all time. Or what it was supposed to be.
On stuff, so maybe that's off limits, but we'll let you fly the plane, Rich, and we'll figure it
out. Well, you've somehow got up his entire history. I don't even know how to research that. I've never done that with a referee. But we've had a couple on the show before. We had actually Kevin McDonald, good segue, because he was a referee in a lot of the fights in Boston, being from Massachusetts, so it's just a good fit. And he did a pretty good job. Nothing controversial. There weren't really too many controversial things. There was some low blows. People were worried about going to end up in some points taken off, but mostly in the Chris Weidman fight. Poor guy. His leg got clubbed to death, and he got low blow a couple times. But yeah, a lot of disappointments for some fighters that the crowd was rooting for, but mostly they got what they wanted. And there's like a part of me that says like that whole entire main event could have been fixed. And then there's part of me that said, no, this is just a natural occurrence when somebody both has self-belief enough to create their own legend and then just generates the buzz where the energy in the arena was so much behind him. Because he is literally one of those guys who creates a cult, and it's always got some kind of gimmick, and his gimmick is the hair. You see a bunch of people wearing green wigs, and then you see a bunch of people wearing the pink wigs. They all got the O'Malley shirts, and he had like the entire Irish contingent behind him. It sounded like they flew 50 Irish people over from across the pond. They were doing the Olay thing, and then Ian Gary as well I believe he's from the UK, so it was kind of a little bit of a Revolutionary War contingent to the whole thing. But they were rooting for the
UK fighters somehow morphed into Irish.
Yeah, it was one big group. They were all rooting for O'Malley, and it got to the point where he comes out for his final, the final main event match, and he looked nervous as hell, and he even admitted it after the fight that he was. But not even nervous. It was so much, almost fear. It was like he hadn't slept. Just deep wells in his eyes, and he did not look confident. And it turned out he did have a little bit of an injury that it would have been bad for him if he had started having to grapple. So if that fight got deep, not only would he definitely lost, but it would have been ugly. Like he would have probably tweaked something bad and got injured worse. So he absolutely had to depend on getting that early knockout. And when he did, oh my God, that place went nuts. Now, I said that a couple weeks ago when that kid with the first round knockout streak was coming up, put a flyer on him, first round knockout. So sure enough, my biggest bet of the entire week was $14 at plus 900 on a first round knockout. I didn't think to do any bets on a second round knockout for O'Malley, so I just lost every bet. I had so many parlays with Sterling as a submission. Oh, I just blew everything. It was bad, but I only put like 200 at risk, and a lot of it was like during the last 4 fights. I was just like trying to do the impossible and win all my money back quickly, which requires some miracles to happen. So kind of did it to myself. But I would have won $141 and change if O'Malley had dispatched him in the first and said it was second. So I was a little pissed about that. But the worst part about the whole experience was trying to get a fucking cab afterwards. Because 2 title fights in Boston, and Boston has shit traffic to begin with. Not much for a traffic plan. And they had enough cops there, but they definitely did not have enough cabs.
Well, I'm assuming you stayed in a hotel, so how far was the hotel from the event?
I should have stayed in a hotel. I figured they'd all be booked and there'd be just expensive rooms left, so I booked an Airbnb, which was, a little bit too expensive, I think, just for the place we got. But anyway, it was like 20 minutes from the Garden, so I figured, Uber there was like $32, and they had
so it would have been 20 minutes to walk?
No, it was 20 minutes driving to get there.
Oh, so walking was just out of the equation.
Yeah. We would still be walking. And we saw a coyote on the way, so we might have got killed. Oh, and it was like 2:30 in the morning by the time everybody got out of there. And I would have been better off sticking around with Kenny Hewer, a former guest, and dismantling the cage with him. I could have got a cheaper cab at 5:30 a.m.
Wow.
He said he was going to be done at 5:30. I almost met him beforehand, but it just turned out like we were eating and we had to wait forever for our food because they kind of forgot about us after they seated us. And it was kind of a weird place. Like the menu was like you had to scan it into your phone. They didn't have paper menus. But anyway, so we get there and then, we sat through the entire thing from the balcony seats, which was not a whole lot of fun. And those are just real rigid seats. And thankfully we were like real close to the aisle. But I would have lost my mind being in the middle.
To be honest, what would be the word, scintillating?
No, there was not a lot of finishes.
A scintillating card.
No,
I fell asleep during the co-main event.
Oh, the co-main event. That was one of the good ones to watch in person because that Brazilian girl was absolute, just ruthless as far as the heart. Absolutely. Still trying to the very end. A couple times almost since that weird looking submission. But, I mean, it was just a little bit of pitter-patter here and there, and everybody's hoping for the stoppage because, surprisingly, everybody in Boston was in love with Wei Li. They started chanting her name. But then they're so against the Russian that they're rooting for a Brazilian and chanting USA. They caught themselves and they stopped. It was like a whole contingent I think it was like to the right of me, but they were like, this is a big Brazilian dude in there stomping this Russian down. Like, USA.
But the fact that O'Malley pulled it off and he has that one defeat on his record, and Chico won his fight. So Chico was interviewed, and you probably caught that he said, I'll beat his ass again.
Oh, yeah.
And they're starting to jawbone about it, and Sean says, hey, you better be more respectful. I can fight Henry. I can do a rematch. I don't need to fight you and give you a chance. So we'll see how that happens, see how it goes.
Yeah. Well.
I'm happy.
Tony. There he is.
Hey.
How we doing?
I'm doing good. The puppy is home and happy.
Oh, there you go. I figured it was something pressing, like puppy related. So we're gonna have a pleasant surprise for you. We know your birthday's coming up in a couple weeks, This is one of a couple I got planned for you. The other one you might be getting in the mail in the next couple of days. But we got Harvey Dock on the show tonight. Very big time referee.
Really? Nice.
Yeah. I figured you'd know.
He just did a pretty big fight.
Yeah. Spence Crawford.
Sure. Pretty big fight.
Tom's been doing the research.
Yeah.
So I was bidding on a John Scully original with him. And it got to the point where I said, yeah, this is too deep for my pockets. So I let it go.
I've seen some of the Scully ones, they do get kind of deep.
Yeah. Roy Jones Jr., he had a signature. And me and him went back and forth. So I looked at his page and I was like, oh, yeah, I got to get him on the show. So no hesitation. He was like, yeah. So hopefully he remembers, because that was a couple days ago. But we'll get him on one way or another, this week or next week. And hopefully it's tonight. But yeah, Tom and I were just talking about the UFC fights. We'll probably have to kind of go through the rest of them later. But the two big ones. The second one turned into mostly a kickboxing match, because in the main event. Because Aljamain Sterling had gotten so cocky. Tony, you've probably seen this in a lot of fighters where they say, fuck what worked my entire career. I'm going to fight his style and show the world that I can beat him at his game. So stupid Aljamain Sterling, who's a pure wrestler, decides he ain't even going to go for a takedown until like the last 30 seconds of round one. He even said to the freaking general public, I'm going to try to knock him out, TKO first round. Which, it's going to spark some bets, but it's probably not going to happen. And he tried to make it happen, so he gave Sean O'Malley an avenue to win the fight, because Sean O'Malley happened to have a little injury where it prevented him from grappling for the last 6 weeks of his training camp. So it could not have gone any better for Mr. O'Malley. And it was a big Irish homecoming for Dana White. Dana White loves the guy, but here's the kicker. You might not have even heard this, Tony. I know you don't religiously follow mixed martial arts like Tom and me. But Sean O'Malley has now called out Gervonta Davis. Soon as he got the title around his waist, he wants a boxing match with Gervonta Davis. What does that tell you about the strength of the MMA world right now? I bet you Dana White was like, what the fuck did I give this kid a chance for?
It's funny, you bring that up, Rich, because it's going to be amazingly 6 years this weekend. I think it was August 26th of 17. Wow. 6 years. Crazy. Wow. When McGregor fought Mayweather. And that was the first really big, guy stepping out of his, comfort zone to take on the biggest name out there. And I remember when we were talking about that, and they were doing the whole Access thing on Showtime, and all the hype was coming up, and people were talking about it, and people were asking me, and like I said, and by no means am I speaking of a person with inside knowledge. I'm just talking with somebody with experience on how things work, both in and the in the ring part of it, but also behind the scenes part of it. And someone says, well, if Mayweather wins, and he should, because he's fighting in his environment, should then he fight in McGregor's environment? And I said, that'll never happen. They said, why? I said, because this is going to be under Mayweather Promotions, pretty much. And who's going to make the money? Mayweather and McGregor. If they fight under the UFC banner, who's going to make the money? Dana White. So I said, it's never going to happen. They're doing this because this is where the most money is going to fall into their pockets. And lo and behold, they never fought outside of the boxing ring.
why are a lot of UFC guys calling out boxers and not vice versa? Do you ever see Canelo Alvarez jumping up and saying, hey, after I fight Jermell Charlo in September, I want to fight so-and-so in the cage?
And Tony, just to bring a point about that, Terrence Crawford was on Joe Rogan, and you can just get on YouTube. It was about a 5-minute clip when they were talking about that somewhat. And Terrence was just saying because he wrestled in high school, so Joe was asking him questions about it, but he just said, man, them kicks and elbows, and it don't pay enough money. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
that's it. Terrence Crawford's an interesting interview.
Yeah. You know, and not just the fact that it's, you know, the kicks and the elbows and the chokeholds don't pay enough money. It, you know, as a boxer and being somebody that trained in boxing, here's how much of a disadvantage you're in. In boxing, you know, you're trained to only focus really on a guy's upper body. His torso, his arms, his fist, his head. You don't get, you know, you're not expecting guys to take, you know, double leg takedowns on you like they would in amateur wrestling. You know, and then the same thing, as a person that's trained as a grappler or as a Greco-Roman or a freestyle wrestler, an amateur wrestler, they're really focused on protecting against the takedowns. So they're susceptible to punches. You know, like they would come in for a takedown, and if you can time it right, you can hit them with an uppercut, you know, because they're not focused on defending, you know, a punch. So if you're taking on somebody that's a grappler, and they do that shoot on you, and they go for your legs, one, you really are not trained to defend it, and two, once you're off your feet, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I don't know how well that's going to go. But
a couple of years ago, we were working the Christmas tree, you know, a lot, and we had a guy there that had taken a few, you know, I wouldn't call it ultimate fighting. I mean, I wouldn't call them MMA. They were more like, it was a martial art. I don't know if it was jiu-jitsu. I don't know if it was taekwondo. It was a martial art. And he was really getting full of himself. And when we're there, and it was my first year there, so I really didn't know a lot of the guys. And I'm watching this guy chain smoke, and I'm like, you think you're an athlete, buddy? And he's sitting there, and he's my master, whatever. And I'm like, oh, come on, dude. I never even heard, you know, them call Sensei Creed master in, you know, in Karate Kid. So, yeah, my master tells me, and then the one day someone was saying, he goes, Tony only boxes. That I don't even consider that something. And I was like, what? And then I go, all right, dude, I'll do a deal with you. You know, we'll do one-on-one. We'll do my discipline and your discipline. I do not put gloves on. I said, oh, so you want me to take you on in your trained environment, but then you don't want to step into mine. I don't fight with gloves on. You know, my master has taught me whatever. And I'm like, then my one friends are saying to me, they're like, you know what? He's bluffing because even though he's trained in these martial arts, he's never actually sparred. He's never been in a live, you know, environment.
You know, he probably doesn't know what cardio is either because they teach that one strike and the fight's over. Yeah, see how that works.
And then he was saying something, and my one friend goes, you know what, I'm just going to, I forget the guy's name was Bill or Billy or something. He goes, Billy, I'm going to tell you something. He goes, you know, you're talking to a guy that, yes, he has boxed, and he's had 30-plus live fights and trained in a very tough Philadelphia gym. But you got to remember something else. He grew up with street fighting. So you don't think he knows how to fight if the thing goes to the ground? He does. And you don't think he knows how to, you know, do like a Mike Tyson, bend your arm backwards? You know, kind of like a dirty move in a boxing ring? But Mike Tyson still did it. And I copied him on it one time when a guy cheap shot at me in a sparring session. We got in a clinch. I hyperextended his elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. You don't think he knows that when you get into a clinch how to position his shoulder under your mouth and shoulder you right in the mouth a couple times?
Nice.
You don't think he knows how to miss a right hand? I'm doing quotation marks right now. Miss a right hand and crack you with his elbow.
And remember, Tony, something else. You fight like you train, okay? And when you're sparring for a real fight, that's a whole different game. But if you're just in a traditional place doing these katas, I guess they call them, that kind of stuff, or if you're even what they call sparring, but they pull everything. It's like a game of tag. And until you get hit once and realize, wow, that hurt. This is real. And, believe me, I've been in all those environments. And you get in a boxing gym, you're going to find out real quick if it's for you. I mean, theoretically, you could get a black belt in some of these traditional arts and not really get hurt. Right. But that doesn't work in boxing. You go into an MMA gym, you will find out abruptly if it's for you or not. Believe me, I've been in all.
You know, Tom, you can break a board. A board doesn't hit back.
Yep. Yeah, so, there's a lot of this back and forth. We got Tyson Fury against Francis Ngannou is the biggest one, obviously, that has been made. But anyway, we're all over the place tonight. But getting back to the UFC card, the one big knockout was a guy from Brazil against a Russian dude who had like 7 losses. And my girlfriend was noticing he's trying to take his gloves off immediately after the fight. He got knocked out. And I don't know if he was trying to retire right there or what, but bad environment to retire in at this time. Anywhere in America, sees with the war going on. But that was a crowd favorite result there. And at one point, the entire crowd got into a USA chant for a guy that was from Brazil. Was winning the fight. Just because the other dude was Russian. So that was crazy. And the first fight was interesting. Last second of the first round, submission. I kind of saw that coming. Both Silva girls I expected to win. Everybody kind of expected to win. Then there was a fight, Meerschaert versus Petrovsky. And I think Meerschaert got screwed. I really thought he had a tactical advantage. He got a little bit more wrestling techniques by Petrovsky, bruised Petrovsky up. Petrovsky looked like he had been hit in the face by a couple bricks. And Meerschaert didn't even look like he had been in a fight, except for being tired. Because they were both exhausted by the end of it. But, it was a bad one. Then we had some other notables were Cody Gibson and Brad Katona. Anyway, I'm working on a big article on the whole shebang of, I'm actually doing 2. I'm going to do my post-action report of the fights, from watching them, even though it's like a week late. I'm also going to do kind of an analysis of what it was like being there for the first time live at a fight for 16 years. And the differences, that's perfect timing to think about doing not a science book per se, but just a show me the money type book, where the antitrust case is coming into fruition. This boxing trend is starting with a lot of these big name fighters realizing even in the UFC, their biggest potential for making money is a crossover fight. You got Jake Paul coming through the system and Logan Paul getting all these crazy fights just off their fame from YouTube. And the real message I think that UFC 292 kind of brought to me was the power of self-belief and the energy that a cult following can put behind a person who not only has enough self-belief to become legendary, but then has the ability to become a Pied Piper for the rest of the group behind him. And anytime he performs, they go nuts. And that's the kind of following that Sean O'Malley has created out of nowhere. It's basically, he was this little nerdy kid nobody knew anything about. And then he goes on Dana White's Contender Series, and you blink a couple times and he's champion. And the interesting thing about it all is, I've always said, like, Dana White is too easy to influence for some of these fighters. I saw it one time on a Tough episode when one of these kids, there was a fight coming up, and they weren't sure exactly who was going to end up facing who. And one of these kids, Dana White, came over to the house, and he just ran up to him immediately when he came in the door, and he's like, "I really like that fight." So Dana was like, "Okay, no matchmaking needed. You got it." He's just that kind of guy. Like, obviously, a lot of fighters feel like they have to suck up to him a little bit to get opportunities. And O'Malley, in his post-fight speech, pretty much admitted to wanting to be like Dana White and wanting to be able to spend $250,000 a poker hand. So that's what made me laugh the most. When the next thing out of his mouth is he wants to fight Gervonta Davis in a boxing match. So, like, are you serious, kid? Like, you just got here. How about taking a minute to look around and figure out how you're going to keep your belt here first before you talk about going and fighting in boxing, dude? Get out of here, buddy. But he is that kind of guy. Whatever it is, you can call it a complex, but he has done it. It's like, there's an old quote, you can't call it conceited. I think Michael Jordan said it. You can't call it conceited if you can do it. Being conceited, if you talk about it, it's because you can do it. And he talked about it, and it's because he could do it. And I wasn't really all that impressed with his style. I just was wondering when the fight was going to start, because there was so much dancing in the first round. But he was basically what they call in boxing feeling the other guy out. And nobody would suggest Aljamain Sterling ever cross over into boxing. Like, he's not a striker. Not known for his knockouts at all, whether it's by the foot or by the hands. He chokes you out or he wrestles you into a stalemate. And it's not an exciting method, but it's very strategic, and he wins a lot of fights. He had a 9-fight winning streak. But the whole thing is, from the very beginning of the UFC, you have to put on a show. And he had that very controversial fight with Peter Yan, where he got the title by way of a disqualification, basically. And everybody hated it. So he bore the brunt of the MMA fans in general, not just the Boston fans, because O'Malley was Irish. It was just, the MMA fans in general were kind of like still upset with him that he even had the title.
How about that chant, Rich? How about that chant in the first round?
Oh, F you. Yeah. Yes. Like, it was bad. It was like straight up Dana White style hatred. And I was surprised, actually, as he was coming to the cage, he was like doing the old Hulk Hogan thing. Like, I can't hear you. Give me some more. But I think he was bothered. He had to have been bothered by it. Because I think usually in Vegas he gets a lot more cheers. So he's coming into his environment, trying to prove a point by fighting in his style. I mean, he just made kind of a lot of errors in judgment coming into this one. But I'll tell you, Tony will like this. I was thinking to myself when he was giving his post-fight speech, Sterling, this sounds a lot like Rocky IV. Did you see it, Tom? Because he was just like so accepting of the fact that he just lost. O'Malley's the new champ, that he said something to the effect of, I respect him. He's just trying to chase his dream, just like all of you should chase your dreams. And I wanted to just yell out, I believe and you can believe. We all believe. Whatever it was that Rocky said at the end of that fight.
Well, I'd like to hear what he says in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Sometimes right after the event, right after it happens, you may say something different when it sinks in.
Yeah. But it's the whole thing where not only do you have to do that, you have to put on a show, you have to have a risky fight style, you have to be a good striker. It's also kind of the evolution of the sport to where wrestling is not the chief discipline anymore. If you're going to be
it depends.
The kind of career that pays the big bucks, you don't want to do a lot of wrestling. You want to be a striker. Because Dana White doesn't pay top dollar for wrestlers. You might happen to be a good wrestler that's at the top, and nobody can beat you, so you stay there. But as far as all the outside opportunities and going over to boxing, that's not going to happen for a wrestler. But the whole Zuffa boxing thing getting killed, you wonder, like, how pissed does that have to make Dana White when the guy that he freaking helped get to this point stabs him in the back, basically, on live TV in front of his own hometown crowd? Oh.
Yeah.
Like, now you got to think about that. And now there's a little bit of talk now that Conor McGregor might want to just retire and not take this Chandler fight. He was not even at the fight where Brad Katona was actually on his team. Granted, he was kind of taken from Team Chandler and put on Team McGregor for shits and giggles. But Brad Katona actually trains with John Kavanaugh. So that's Conor McGregor's big-time trainer. So you would think he would at least show up for that reason. But apparently he was in full training and feeling good, so he didn't want to make the trip. And he was talking about he shouldn't be hanging out all of these things all over the world. But he'll happily take his freaking yacht to like a soccer game. That doesn't mean shit to the UFC in his career. But, I mean, that's the kind of distraction type of situation he's getting himself in, because he does have a lot of money, he does have a lot of fame, and he doesn't need MMA. Doesn't need the money from the fight. So he can put it off as long as he wants, and who knows if he's even healed properly from his injury. They say it takes at least 2 years for a broken bone to heal. And that was a serious break. That's not your run-of-the-mill break. So it could be 3, 4. You don't know. But anyway. So there's talk of a Chito Vera fight. If that works out, that will be the rematch. That will be the one loss that O'Malley has. He'll have to avenge. And I really wonder how he's going to do it. He's obviously going to have to do a little grappling when it comes to Chito, because he's not going to get away with going into the fight with that kind of injury with him. Not that Chito's big-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy. He's more of a kickboxer, but he's going to have to try to grab that foot every time he gets kicked in the body and disrupt Chito's game, I think, to win that fight, and do a lot of that kind of ground and pound to finish the fight against Sterling. Because he doesn't really do a lot of kicks himself, O'Malley. He likes to strike with his hands more than anything. And he's got good hands, got good, quick, powerful hands. And I didn't even see, because I was so far up in the stands, like, how many punches he landed until you watch the replay. But he landed so many punches in a row. It's got scary accuracy. And split the eye of Sterling open, even though it didn't even really seem like the punches were all that powerful because they were so fast. But he does have some special hands. I don't know about special enough to go over to boxing. All these guys think they can do it, but put yourself in a 12-round sparring match with a boxer first before you open your mouth. You might change your mind after that. But yeah, we'll see. Ryan Garcia got into it with him, actually, over Twitter, I heard, saying, yeah, go ahead and try that. You're going to get knocked out. So be careful what you wish for, kind of thing. Anyway. So it was a good card. There was also another Ultimate Fighter matchup on the card where Austin Hubbard was going up against Kurt Hollabaugh. And that one went into the second round. And first round, Hubbard was doing pretty good. He was kind of pacing himself, edging out decision win. And then second round, he just got sloppy and got caught in a rear naked choke, I believe it was. Or no, a triangle choke. He started out as an armbar and ended up in a triangle. So that was just a pretty slick win for Hollabaugh. So they get the UFC contract. But the Brad Katona and Cody Gibson fight, oh man, that was one of the most brutal fights I've ever seen in person.
Yeah, that was a wild
one. And Katona ended up just being a couple seconds quicker on the draw with a lot of the punching exchanges, and he would exit last with a punch that would land, and it just seemed like he had Cody's timing down. But what Cody did was he just never gave up. He kept coming forward, blinded in one eye. He didn't care. He would get up off the ground and keep coming at him, push him into the cage.
He didn't have a plan B, Rich. He didn't seem to adjust the strategy at all.
Yeah,
at all.
Just like, all right, I'm going to be RoboCop. It's going to keep coming at you. So I thought that was great. Good fight. And then that they both got contracts, I thought that was a classy move by the UFC. And of course, they got the movie wrong, but I've seen a lot of comparisons to some MMA movie with the guy that was the music teacher there. Because Cody Gibson is actually an English teacher, but there was a movie called The Warrior that they should have been comparing it to, because that guy really was an English teacher, I think, if I remember correctly. But they were comparing it to the Kevin James movie because I think it was a little more popular. He was in it.
Here Comes the Boom.
Yes, that's the one. So, who says
Henry Winkler?
Who says Tony doesn't know his MMA? Then there was Ian Gary versus Neil Magny. Now, this is a good one to talk about just because I love talking about the Dana White slap incident. And this one had some MMA writer writing this crazy article where it kind of made me start looking around and saying, wait a second, all of a sudden there's a lot more people in the media of MMA who are criticizing the fuck out of the UFC. Like, where did these people come from? I used to be the only one. So anyway, the big domestic violence implications of the slap heard around the world, I call it, came into play in this fight, I guess, because Neil Magny said in the pre-fight hype, I'm going to beat you like I beat my kid, to Ian Gary. So Ian Gary has become this big hero because he's going to beat the guy who beats his kid. And it's just like, oh my God. Like, this is news, but anyway. So Ian Gary and Neil Magny started at the press conference, then got into the weigh-in. They were slapping each other, flipping each other off. Neil Magny's only on like 3 weeks' notice for this fight, so it's hard to believe it got this personal. So anyway, we're at the fight now, and Ian Gary, I don't know if he decided he just wanted to go to the decision or just couldn't get enough situations where he had the faith in his ground game enough to try to ground and pound Neil out, but he primarily used leg kicks to just tenderize.
I get the feeling he carried him. That he enjoyed what he was doing, and he knew Magny had nothing for him.
Yeah.
And those kicks were horrendous. I mean, you've seen the pain.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there.
Magny could barely stand.
You heard him screaming. I mean,
yeah.
Wow.
It was rough to watch.
And Gary just loved it. Man, he's just go some more. Give it 5 rounds.
Like, nobody would have bet on that. And that was one of the ones that's probably not fixed, but like, if he wanted to make some money for his people back home, he could have just told everybody, Neil Magny, he's just a late replacement. I know his style. I'm going to mess him up, but I'm going to make it go the distance. Like, you could do that. As long as you don't get connected to it through a family member, like you could literally make a shit ton of money on the betting now. And the UK has been legal before the entire United States, pretty much, except for Vegas and New Jersey. But yeah, Ian Gary basically cruised through the whole fight, and he was dancing afterwards, and he flipped off Neil. I don't think Neil even saw it. Neil just turned his head.
Yeah, that was after round 2.
Yeah. So everybody in the crowd went nuts for that. And then there was kind of a boring fight between Mario Batista and Damon Blackshear. But I thought Damon got screwed on the decision. That was not a unanimous decision win to me for Batista. There was a little bit more ground control, a little bit better wrestling for Batista. But I thought Blackshear had some of the better moments and won at least 2 of those 3 rounds. And then they just don't even give him a split decision win. Or even a split decision loss would have been understandable. I did not really like Batista's style. I didn't think he did enough to win, so that one surprised me. Marlon Vera, his unanimous decision over Pedro Munoz did not. It was pretty one-sided. Munoz kind of really couldn't get anything working. Didn't help that his reach is so short. You can't there's not much you can do against a world-class striker when he outreaches you by like 6 inches. Or more. I don't know how the distinction was, but man, that was rough. He got beat up quite a bit in the face, but Vera never looked like he was worried. I think there was like one exchange where he got popped pretty good in the chin, but he's really good at lateral movement, and even though he's such a good striker, he's not like a type of guy that looks for the knockout unless it's coming. Like unless he sees that stumble. Then he wades in. He just fights a lot, and a lot of his fights just crazy smart. So that's what makes me think O'Malley's really going to have to do something different. He can't just come out of a traditional striker. He's going to have to throw a little grappling in to disrupt his game. And then we had the All-American, one of the biggest disappointments for that entire crowd. I think they wanted to find Brad in the parking lot and beat him up afterwards. They were so upset.
Yeah, those leg kicks.
Another one.
Yeah. To turn a heart, but he just the game's passed him by. I think.
And Tony,
that was brutal.
You're a big NFL fan, so you know the guy that had his leg mangled, Alex Smith, I think, right?
Oh yeah.
Quarterback. It's that type of injury for Weidman, except we talked about this a couple times with Anderson Silva first when he kicked Weidman and broke his leg, and it was like shin to bone, and the whole leg just snapped, and then he fell down on his ass, and obviously everybody knew the fight was over. But with Weidman, his leg broke on the kick, and then he tried to plant on it. So I don't know the exact amount of time he's been out, but they did this whole promo of his, physical therapy and all that. But if you've ever known wrestling or watched wrestling at the college and high school level and everything like that, what's actually involved in MMA, this is all about the legs. Everything starts with the legs. Like, even being able to pick somebody up into a single or a double leg, you've got to use your legs, both of them. So the odds of him coming back were slim to none, and the odds of him being competitive were even slimmer. So I kind of expected him to have a tough time, but I figured he might be able to edge out a decision against a guy like Tavares, who was kind of long on experience but short on the knockout power. But it went the distance. Tavares got a lot of boos because not only was there a lot of leg kicks, but there was a lot of nut shots. Weidman got kicked a couple times. Talk about adding insult to injury. And the leg that was initially injured, I don't even think was the problem. It ended up being the other one. he tore an ACL or an MCL, according to Dana White. He doesn't know yet, but it's one of them. So it happened to be the knee, I think. But Weidman was actually very impressive to the point that even with an injured leg, he was kicking a lot, just trying to get any points he could get. And the sad part was watching him go for those takedowns. That he just looked like an amateur trying to even secure because he had nothing to stand on.
And Dubois looked so much bigger.
Yeah.
It's I don't know about the weight, putting the weight back on.
Dana White has
that's another thing.
basically said he should retire.
In that Terrence Crawford 5-minute little talk that's on YouTube with Rogan, they talked about the weight cuts.
Yeah.
And in boxing, it's not that extreme, according to what Crawford was saying.
Yeah.
And I mean, they talked about how there should be different weight divisions. Just there's not enough weight divisions in MMA compared to boxing.
Yeah.
And Tavares looked like looked huge.
Yeah. Yep, pretty big dude. And he's training. Like, you got to remember that. Like, Weidman has been in cold storage, quite literally, because he's probably icing the fuck out of his leg all this time. But Brad Tavares is in the gym all the time. He lives in Vegas. I'm pretty sure he trains out there. So, yeah, it's one of those things where, a lot of heart came into my bets where I should have just been thinking, Tavares all the way. He's going to win this one. Because even without going for that weak point of the legs to begin with, he was quicker moving around the cage. He was smarter about his attacks. And it's like that dude that I fought in the Nationals with his legs born on the wrong side of his body. Sometimes you just got to move a certain way, and you can beat a guy like that because he can't keep up with those angles. So it could have even been a little bit of that because the leg kicks really didn't start until later in the fight. And then he was like, fuck it, I'm winning already. Might as well take a break and kick his leg a couple times. Not like that. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a sad thing to watch, but I could see Brad just playing his, trying to show respect, because he knew why the crowd was rooting for him, and he probably felt bad for him. I don't know if they're friends outside of it, but they're obviously not like bitter enemies. Like they weren't spitting at each other after the fight. But yeah, Brad kind of knew he had an easy fight, I think, and just kind of didn't put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. Just did what he had to do to win. It didn't look very hard. It was aggravating, probably, when Weidman was like, screw you, I'm still going to kick you. To the very end. And then Gregory Rodriguez, I'd like to call him the Lincoln lawyer on steroids. He took out Dennis Tululin in 1 minute and 43 seconds, and that was the quickest knockout of the night. And then there was the Hollowbow triangle choke we talked about earlier. And then we had 3 straight decisions before that. And the submission to finish the first round before that one. But yeah, that one was tough to sit through because there literally was 5 straight unanimous decisions from the Tavares fight. And one of them was 5 rounds. So, yeah. Crazy. Johnny Damon was in the building, too. I thought that was crazy that he got so many cheers. I mean, granted, he was on a World Series team for us, but he did trade over to the Yankees before he retired. So I figured he might get some boos. But no, he was right cage side. And some other famous people there. But all in all, it was a pretty decent card. I did see a lot of people come in like right when the main event started, or the main card started. And we decided to show up before the very first preliminary got in right when everybody else was getting in, and that's a long time to sit in your seats. Even going to the bathroom a few times. You know, once that place fills up too, it's like hard to stand up and go even get a beer in between fights. So I sat in my seats probably like 6 straight fights, and yeah, it was very uncomfortable, especially being so high up off the ground. Too, because you're trying to squint to see the fights. My girlfriend's phone was better than mine as far as taking pictures from that level. She took some like professional level pictures with her little Samsung phone that's like one level above mine. So I was surprised, but I tried to put some of my videos up on Facebook, and they got like copyrighted immediately because I was filming the jumbotron. But anyway, that was a great card to go to. Next time, I will probably spend the extra money on the floor seats at ground level. Because, I could still see, though. It was kind of nice to see it from that big, huge perspective. Kind of like the old Coliseum and the Emperor way up there in the balcony seat. I could see the whole entire arena. I could see Bruce Buffer walking in at the beginning. That was kind of cool. And when Joe Rogan came in, everybody was cheering for him. I saw them do all their promos from way up there. That was cool. Joe Rogan actually almost ran somebody over after the fight. Not him personally, but whoever was his limo driver. Because we were waiting for our cab. And all of a sudden, all these people screaming. I guess he had rolled down his window, and there was enough people there. They went nuts, and they started following his limo, and he turned out into the street. And one kid followed him right out in the street, almost got his foot run over. And then the guy sped off. I was like, oh shit. Nuts. Anyway. So that was that. We probably got another UFC card this weekend. I'm sure. Gotta find it. What do we have for boxing last week, Tony? What did I miss there?
Nothing. I did not see a single televised card last week.
Really?
And what I generally do a lot on the weekends now, because what you used to do is you would, get the newspaper, and the sports section would say, okay, what's on TV tonight? And they would say, okay, you have all your channels. You'd have your HBO, your Showtime, ESPN, ESPN Plus, ESPN, 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, CBS, all those, and you would see what sports are on. You could look at baseball, hockey, football, boxing, mixed martial arts. So now with all these apps, they won't put what's on the apps. They won't put if something's on ESPN Plus or DAZN or stuff like that. So what I do on the weekend is I follow Rick DeLezer on Facebook, and he will list every televised card, whether it's on free TV, whether it's on premium channels, whether it's on an app, and he'll tell you these are the times they start and how to watch. Last week, he was like, okay, we got one fight card this week. It's at 2 o'clock on Saturday from somewhere about 5 hours ahead of us in time.
Love it.
So, yeah, I didn't watch anything last weekend.
All right. Well, we'll check out the schedule for this upcoming week. I know we've got just the UFC card tomorrow. No Bellator until September, and PFL had a big event yesterday. But yeah, UFC Fight Night 225. That's tomorrow talk about halfway around the world. Singapore, they're going. And it's the Korean Zombie versus Max Holloway, who is conveniently from Hawaii. Singapore to Hawaii is on my.
Now, that has an unusual start time, doesn't it? Or
yeah, I'm gonna have to make all my bets on Friday. Anyway, Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann in the co-main event at light heavyweight. First Max Holloway is 24-7 at featherweight. Chan Sung Young is 17-7. I kind of like Max Holloway in that one, but you got to question his chin with some of those past situations where they were interviewing him and he was slurring his speech. And he is one of those guys that tries to fight hands down like it always works. And a guy like Chan Sung Young, kind of in his home territory, in his home region, it's going to be hyped up. He's going to have a lot of fans there. So you never know. That's a good matchup, I think. But I think Holloway's going to take it. It's going to be a good one. Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann. That's a tough one. We don't know where Anthony Smith is. He has had a lot of ups and downs these last few years. Kind of looked old in his last fight. And Ryan Spann, Superman Spann, he is capable of a knockout. He's capable of a submission. You never know what he's going to bring to the table. So this one, another good matchup. Good thought process putting that fight together. Then we got old Bruce Leroy still kicking ass and taking names. 21-13. I believe he won his last fight. He's actually been looking good lately. But Giga Chikadze. He kind of reminds me of a Skinny Bear Grylls. He is 14-3. He's a tough Russian dude. And he's got scary knockout power for featherweight. So I don't like Alex Caceres' chances in that one. I'm betting he's the underdog. Without even looking at the odds. We got Aaron Blanchfield, 11-1 at flyweight, fighting Tyler Santos, 19-2. Junior Tafa, 4-1 at heavyweight, fighting Parker Porter, 13-8. That's going to be an interesting one. Where's Waldo? Waldo Cortez Acosta, 9-1 at heavyweight. He's fighting Lucas Brzeski, who's 8-3-1. Like there's a heavyweight tournament or something. What's going on there? Back-to-back big boys going at it. We got Toshiomi Kazama, 10-3 at bantamweight, fighting Garrett Armfield, who's 8-3. We got Chidi Njokuani, 22-9, fighting Michael Oleksiuk, who is 18-6. Got Keenan Song, 19-7, fighting Rolando Bedoya, who's 14-2. Billy Goff at welterweight, 8-2, fighting Yusaku Kinoshita, who is 6-2. JJ Aldrich in a female fight, 11-6, fighting Na Liang, who is 19-6. Sung Woo Choi, 10-6, fighting Jarno Aarons, who's 13-4-1 at featherweight to lead off the night. That's it. That's all we get for MMA this week, except for, if you watched it yesterday from New York, we have the PFL 9 playoffs, and good old combat sport fighter, Clay Collard, got the win in the main event. He's 25-10 now as an MMA fighter. Beat Shane Burgos. Pretty big name for him. 16-5. A lot of experience. Clay is a pretty entertaining boxer, too. I'm sure you've seen him in action, Tony. But, he's making his waves in the PFL. This is, I think, the third straight year he's been in it. Co-main event was Aubin Mercier, UFC veteran. He beat Bruno Miranda by TKO in the second round. Sabadou Sai before that, beating Carlos Leo Miranda by decision. By split variety. Unanimous decision before that for Alexei Pergande over Sean Stefanelli. Mustafa Rashed Nada over Corey Cup by TKO. That was 1 minute and 55 seconds into the fight. Michelle Montague in a female fight, beating Abigail Montez by rear naked choke submission, 3 minutes and 38 seconds into the second round. We had Abdullah Al-Qurtani beating David Zellner in a featherweight fight by unanimous decision. First fight of the night ended quick in the first round. 2 minutes and 32 seconds in, John Caldone beating Nathaniel Grimard in a heavyweight TKO there. Featherweight, sorry, not heavyweight. Quite the difference. All right, yeah. So before we switch gears to boxing, Tom, what do you think about that Max Holloway versus Korean? The Korean Strangler.
The Zombie's kind of he's kind of a wild card.
Yeah.
But last fight really took a lot out of him, so I still have to go with Max.
Yeah. Well, Max is probably wanting to also kind of pick up where O'Malley left off with the main event performance. He's going to want to kind of keep that line that the striker is supreme. He's not a guy that does a lot of grappling himself, so that's where the Korean Zombie, I think, has got his advantages. He's a little bit better wrestler, I think. I don't think Max is afraid to go to the ground. It's just people love to see him slug with people, so he's going to try to oblige them. Just going to make it clean, that's all. Have good takedown defense. All right, so Saturday for boxing. Let's see what we got. Down there in Auckland, we've got Jerome Pampalone, 16-0 at light heavyweight, fighting Luvoio Cezanne, 7-0, for the IBF Intercontinental light heavyweight title. And then we got another super bantamweight fight. Can't really tell if this is female or male because we got Amia and Ellen. I guess Ellen could be. No, it's 10-2, so it's females. Okay, that's where it is now. This whole politically correct world now. I guess you can't say female bantamweight championship, but it's for the IBO World Female Super Bantamweight Championship. Mia Motu comes in at 16-0. Ellen Simwaka 12-6-2. The big one is Saturday. There's a lot of controversy over the pay-per-view price for this one because nobody's expecting any major fireworks on the part of Daniel Dubois. But Alexander Usyk comes in with just one more win and one less loss, 20-0, and Dubois comes in at 19-1. Has lost one of his last 6, so it wasn't like he lost his second fight and then that was it. But number 4 in the world, so probably no slouch. I don't know a lot about him. I don't know. Do you, Tony?
You know what? You figure, Usyk hasn't had a lot of fights, but you got to look at his quality of opposition. Daniel Dubois is a talented fighter. He is a worthy challenger. But I think, you have to go with the undefeated guy here, the class right now, possibly the class of the division in Usyk. I think it's going to be entertaining early. Dubois got to punch his chance. He absolutely does. But I think, Usyk's conditioning and his constant pressure. I know what Anthony Bello said about a couple years ago. He goes, fighting a guy like Usyk, he goes, he just mentally drains you. He exhausts you by his constant pressure, and he's in your face. He smothers you. He's always got pressure on you, and he makes you work so much that it's like he is like almost a type of a Marciano type, where he's always making you work, whether you're punching or moving, and his constant pressure mentally fatigues you. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I'm going stick around the 9th round.
All right. I might take that bet, literally. I go to New Hampshire tomorrow. The 9th round. Okay. It's possible. I have to crunch some numbers, look at Dubois' history. But he's got the one loss. I don't know if that was knockout or decision. Seems like a lot of the heavyweight fights have been going to decision lately, except for obviously the Joshua one we just had. Co-main event there, I guess. I don't know if it's actually co-main event, but it's going by the 2 stars request I gave to Boxrec. This is the next fight in line. Dennis Berinchik, 17-0, number 13th in the world at lightweight, fighting Anthony Yigit, 27-3-1 for the WBO International Lightweight title. And then we got Dmitro Mitrofanov. He's 13-0-1 against Hamza Shiraz, 17-0 at middleweight. Number 112 in the world versus number 13. The WBC silver middleweight title. No missed matches of the week. I guess we kind of lost out on that when I started doing 2-star searches because I don't have many 2-star matches. Should do a 1-star search at the end of that and see if I can find a good one. I still do get the Jesuses and the Elvises and all that. Saturday we got one. I don't know where Commerce is, but it's in the Commerce Casino in Commerce. It's on UFC Fight Pass. We got Juan Jose Velasco, 24-4 at super welterweight, fighting Callum Walsh, who's 7-0, the WBC silver super welterweight title there. We got Rogelio Jundoliguez, who is 25-4-2 at welterweight, fighting Gore Yeritsyan, who's 15-0. And ESPN Plus card from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. Efe Ajagba, 17-1, fighting Zan Kosobutsky, who is 19-0 at heavyweight. Efe Ajagba, he's the guy that famously had the opponent just walk out. Just walk right the hell out of the arena.
I was like, not
nope. Ain't gonna do it. I don't think Kosobutsky is gonna do that.
No, I forgot. I forgot. I gotta go do something else today. I'm not gonna fight.
Yeah. You guys didn't tell me I had to face this guy. Look. Gotta take a union break. Also on this card, we have Andrei Rudenko, 35-6 at heavyweight, fighting Jared Anderson, who's undefeated, 15-0. And then we got some lighter guys. Charlie Suarez, 15-0, against Johan Vasquez, 25-3 at super featherweight. Bruce Carrington, 8-0, against Angel Antonio Contreras, 13-6-2 at featherweight. We got Abdullah Mason, 9-0, against Cesar Villarraga, 10-7-1 at lightweight. Early in the night. Probably won't be televised. And we get all the way to Wednesday in Tokyo. Pretty good card, though. Kisuke Matsumoto, 8-0, against Ridwan Oyakolo, who is 11-1-2. That's for the Japan Boxing Commission title and the WBO Asia Pacific featherweight title. And we got Koki Inoue, 16-1, fighting Abdurasul Ismoilov, who's 10-1 at super lightweight for the WBO Asia Pacific super lightweight title. Really nothing too exciting. The undercard, here's one at flyweight. Brian Mocinos, 23-5 at flyweight, fighting Dave Apollinario, who is 18-0. 18. All right. I forgot. I brought up Daniel Dubois' record. I wanted to see who he lost to. He did get knocked out in his lone loss, and it was the 10th round to Joe Joyce, who was just 11-0. Half the experience that he's going up against now. So yeah, that sounds like good Rain Man math there, Tony. Anyway, yeah. So
I put it in the computer. That's what came out.
Sounds like it. All right. So yeah, I guess that's it. I don't have any big boxing news or MMA news other than the big article I'm probably going to be completing in the next couple of days. I'm going to really go in depth into the difference between the fight I went to in back at UFC 78 16 years ago and the fight I went to last Saturday. Just all the changes that we've seen in the UFC, the development, and just the big glaring fact is just about every single fighter on that UFC 78 card is retired, or all but retired, just hasn't made the announcement. So I mean, it just kind of goes to show you. Whereas now you have a lot of differences. You don't have all the bonuses that you used to have that would encourage knockouts so much. You don't have all the sponsorships that these guys used to scramble to get. You don't have main events that aren't 5 rounds. They're all 5 rounds now. And these contracts, instead of getting better, I think they've gotten worse in a lot of respects because the UFC makes so much money off the ancillary rights that they get, not just the rights to decide who fights who and when, and even though the fighter gets to refuse if there's a fight that they don't like, they don't have to take it. But the UFC pretty much decides who they're going to offer you. They set the amount of fights that you're going to be able to sign for. They have the big championship clause and everything like that, where it kind of locks a championship fighter down for a few fights. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things that have changed over the years. But the biggest thing of all, I think, is kind of the big lesson that I got, like I said earlier, was self-belief and having the energy of a following. There are big things in the world of fighting, especially in the world of MMA, UFC, where you kind of have to have a story and you kind of have to have the public embrace you to get beyond the organization, because the organization just sucks so many people in, makes them company people, and they just only can go so far. But a person that has broad appeal, even if they left the sport tomorrow, can pretty much write their own history. And that's what Sean O'Malley is trying to do. But in a lot of ways, it's what's kind of the worst aspect of where the sport has gone to me, because it just shows you that it's all about money for this kid. This is the new and improved UFC, but this kid admits he wants to be like the Bald Father out there spending $250,000 a hand, which is not responsible money management at all. Whether, no matter if you're a billionaire or not, you don't do that. Like, that's not logical. And yeah, Dana White gets away with it because he has a bunch of casino friends, and he's been around the casino business his entire life and all that. But I mean, it's just like the worst kind of attitude you want a sports person to emulate, and put it out there to others that he should be emulated. I never take away from all the stuff that Dana White has done, but one thing that he hasn't done is be able to keep it at that level where fighters were in it for the love of fighting. He's made so much of it about money and just basically, doing whatever the UFC says so you get more opportunities, and encouraging them with all the financial background to go for the most risky fighting styles just to put asses in the seats. He knows that's what sells pay-per-views. So, I mean, it's just such an evolution that we've seen. And this fact that this antitrust case is coming along at this time and it's going to go to a trial, it's just so fascinating to me. But it's taken 8 years for that to get this far. So it might be another 4 years before we see a decision, or even if it goes to a jury trial. I would imagine the UFC would settle before we let it go to trial. The last thing you want is 12,000 UFC fighters, 1,200 UFC fighters to get up there, badmouth the organization, and it be public. Well, anyway, that's my rant of the week. But yeah, Tony, you're gonna get an early birthday present the next couple of days.
All right.
And we're going to try to work on Harvey Dock for next week. I'm sure we can edit around what we've got and just put it out there. We'll be chatting with him next week. It'll give me a little bit more time to kind of jump on the internet and Google him. Tom was telling me all the fights he was involved in before we got on. But yeah, this should be a great interview. And it would be better that you know it's coming. Instead of surprising you anyway, then you can do some research. But you already knew who he was. I knew you would. Boxing Rain Man in effect. All right, guys. I guess that's it for us.
Guys, enjoy the fights. All right.
I'll try to win some money for once this week.
Well, good luck with that.